So I'm director of Rhode Island Coalition for Israel. We're an organization of grassroots Jews and Christians who believe that Israel was given to the Jewish people by God, and that's why we exist. I'm happy to introduce our first speaker, who will be one of our pastors from Rhode Island, David Dela Cruz. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Howard. I want to thank the Rhode Island Coalition for Israel and Turning Points Rhode Island for hosting today's rally. I also want to extend my gratitude to the diverse crowd that's gathered here today, members of churches, synagogues, and community leaders. I'd like to acknowledge the men and women of the Capitol and Providence Police for ensuring our safety, as well as the State Police. Thank you again for your efforts. They're greatly appreciated. And of course, I pray for peaceful continuation for today's events. Ladies and gentlemen, and fellow Rhode Islanders, I stand before you today not as a member of Ricky or Turning Point, or even a member of my church, but I stand as a Christian man to address the horrific events of October 7th and the persisting anti-Semitism that challenges Israel's right to exist. When I was asked to speak, I wasn't sure exactly what I would say other than this. As a man of faith, I support Israel's existence. To me, this is not just a political or even religious matter, because it comes down to who we are as a people and what kind of world we want to live in, what kind of world we want to leave our children and our grandchildren. In recent days across our nation, and even on this very ground, we've witnessed individuals who evade the unequivocal condemnation of Hamas's unprovoked and unjustified attack. But where they have been silent, I want to be clear. The malevolent Hamas attack on October 7th was an embodiment of Hamas's charter to eradicate Israel, driven by pure evil. It is not rooted in political differences or economic conditions or any grievances, but evil. It is the same evil that we read about in the biblical story of Exodus, and the same evil we witnessed in Europe 80 years ago. We must not turn a blind eye to the adversities faced by the people of Israel, who confront an adversary unwilling to coexist with the nation of Israel. I stand here to emphasize the fundamental truth that the people of Israel have an inherent right to exist, to their statehood, and to their nationhood. I believe that the parents of Israeli children, be they Arab or Jewish, deserve to put their children to bed without fearing Hamas rockets raining down on their homes and their bedrooms. I believe that the Jewish people of Israel should be able to worship on their holy day without persecution or violence from Hamas terrorists. I believe that the youth of Israel should have the freedom to attend a peace concert and celebrate life without being hunted and subjugated to savage violence. These should be self-evident declarations. But the events of these past weekends have underscored that evil and hatred still exist. Evil and hatred bring darkness and death to our world. It was Jesus who said, "The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. But I come that you may have life and have it to the full." Today, my prayers are for the Jewish people. And where there is death, I pray God brings life. And those who have been kidnapped or held hostage, I pray they are protected and returned to their families. And that where there has been destruction, I pray that God's peace would prevail. God bless you, and may God bless the people of Israel. At this time, I'd like to welcome my favorite state senator and my wife, Jessica Dela Cruz. She's also the minority leader in the state Senate.
Thank you everyone for coming out. I know that it's very late notice. It's a Tuesday night and you could be doing other things like, getting your kids ready for school. But I appreciate you coming out tonight and supporting Israel. David, thank you for the lovely introduction, and Rhode Island Coalition of Israel for inviting me, and everyone for being here today. Simply put, we stand in solidarity with Israel. People will say, eventually they'll say, that that Israel should be tempered in their response, and that Israel is using too much force. But I ask, if that happened here in Rhode Island or in the United States, how would we respond as Americans? What happened in 9/11? What happened with Pearl Harbor? We know how we responded. And so Israel has the right to defend itself. Israel has a right to exist. And we need to stand by Israel as they fight this fight. I would remind people that you don't get to terrorize, to kill, to behead, to burn, to kidnap, to rape over 1,400 innocent men, women, children, and babies, and then get your cheerleaders and friends around the world to call for a ceasefire. Israel is faced with an enemy that in its own constitution and its founding documents inscribed the sentiments that Israel does not have the right to exist, that the nation must be driven into the Mediterranean Sea. So let us remember, and let us stand with Israel, however long this fight will last. Thank you. And I'm introducing now Howard from Rhode Island Coalition of Israel.
Thanks so much. Thank you. It's good to know we have politicians with principles. Louder? Okay. Whoever's going to speak, louder. Okay. Our next speaker will be Ken Schneider, who brought that gigantic sign. Give him a round of applause for bringing the gigantic sign. That sign originally hung from the Blue Bug banner, the Blue Bug, statue up on Route 95 for about a month, a few years ago. And we try to haul it out whenever we can. Big enough anyway. So Ken is one of our founding board members of Rhode Island Coalition for Israel, and he's been kind of a public spokesperson in the last few weeks. He was on the Tara Granahan show. He was on the, what's his name, Dan York show, and he was on a clip with Channel 10 just this past week. Yeah. So here he is in the flesh. Ken Schneider. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, Howard, and thank everybody for coming out. So, my name is Ken Schneider, and I'm a board member of the Rhode Island Coalition for Israel, and I am a Zionist Jew. So I think what can't get lost is that we have to go back to October 7th. The Israelis were attacked by Hamas. Over 200 hostages have been taken, and if that's going to remain the number, we don't know, but it's definitely northward of 200 people. 1,400 Israelis were killed. 4,500 have been wounded. There's been 7,300 rockets fired at Israel. So if the U.S. lost the same percentage of citizens, it would be 44,234 Americans that got killed on that day. Okay, which is just unbelievable. So we have to realize that Hamas is ISIS. Hamas is ISIS. Hamas is ISIS.
Hamas is ISIS. Hamas is ISIS.
Absolutely, Hamas is ISIS. And on that October 7th, and I'm sure it's still going on now, their war crimes are including burning babies, beheading babies in front of their parents, killing the parents in front of their kids, rape, torture, and of course the kidnapping that is going on still right now. Hamas's goal is to kill Jews and destroy Israel. Hamas is evil. Hamas cares less about their own people and more about hating Jews. I was here last Saturday in the crowd, and not one speaker, not one person even said the word Hamas. Not one person, not one speaker even said the word hostages. So that's where they're coming from. And it's all about Hamas. It's all about the hostages. The hostages have to be returned, and Hamas has to be eliminated. Let's make no mistake about it that Iran is controlling Hamas.
That's right.
Iran is controlling Hezbollah. Okay, they are a terrorist state. It all comes back to Iran. I've been in Israel a couple of dozen times. It's a beautiful country with fantastic people that literally, they do want to live in peace. I see that, I know that, I talk to too many of them, I get the same thing from everybody. I've been in those southern towns that were attacked and bombed, that continue to get bombed. I've seen the houses that have cement umbrellas over their houses just to protect themselves from rockets. Bomb shelters are everywhere, as I'm sure most people know. You have between 12 and 15 seconds to get into a bomb shelter once you hear the siren. So I can't imagine living like that, but believe it or not, it's really beautiful down there. When the rockets aren't flying, it's a great place to live. And all the homes down there, and in a lot of Israel now, they have safe rooms. These are concrete rooms that if the siren goes off and they can't get to a bomb shelter, you know, they can go right into their safe rooms. So what I've heard over and over and over is that when children are born in Israel, the parents take them right away and they just pray that in 18 years their son or daughter doesn't have to go into the service. It's been happening for so long. Obviously it hasn't come to fruition yet, but that's what I hear from the parents. So, sure, we've all heard saying that if Israel's enemies would put down their weapons, there would be peace. If Israel put down their weapons, there would be no Israel.
That's right.
That is right.
Cat. No ceasefire.
There cannot be a ceasefire.
No way.
And not until Hamas is destroyed and eliminated, and the Israelis and the IDF know that they're gone and they can't come back. And Israel has a moral obligation to annihilate Hamas. If Hamas survives, there's only going to be more violence, more waves every few years. There's going to be another war. So this is the time. Unfortunately, October 7th was the tipping point, and that's when it has to end.
That's right, Ken.
So the IDF is the only military force that gives notice before bombing anywhere. Israel has warned the citizens of North Gaza to head south. They do not want to kill the innocent Palestinians. Anyway,
IDF.
Hamas is trying to force their citizens to stay in the north so that they can have the pictures when they're in harm's way, when the babies get killed, because all that's going to happen. And if I can throw in here right now too, we are going to have to get stronger as time goes on.
That's right.
Because in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whenever shit hits the fan, that's when the media is going to turn on Israel.
right.
It happens every single time, and it's going to be up to us to not let that happen. We have to be the strong ones to make sure that Israel continues what they're doing and that they have the support, and that might go on for months.
Screw the media. Like Motif Magazine.
So, and also I'd like to say, for the first time that I've heard, the UN has condemned Hamas and not Israel in this situation,
That's right.
which is very unique. Whoop. So I also want to tell you that Israelis absolutely feel like they're on an island. Whenever this happens, they need to know that the Jews all over the world support them, agree with them, and want to be there, okay? I've been there many times. One of the best things I ever did is that I asked the kids at JCDS and at Temple Emmanuel to write little cards just saying thank you for being a soldier and draw a little picture on it. I brought it over there, I handed it out to the soldiers. I had no idea what their response was going to be, but they were so unbelievably happy to know that there's kids in Rhode Island that got together and wrote them a little card. It was actually made me feel so great to do that. I plan on going back to Israel in January. I go on a volunteer program, and I get placed on military bases to help. And I'm going to ask the schools to write cards again, because it was amazing that last time. So
All right.
I have on here a little saying that we can get twisted. From the river to the sea, Israel will be free.
Real Hamas. That's right.
So when anything goes on like this, people always say, what can they do? And I always want to have an answer. And the best answer that I can give you is to go to Israel. Okay, like I say, I'm going to go there in January. Right, honey? And it's a program called Volunteers for Israel. It can be Googled. It's going to be the first time that comes up. And it's an amazing program. I've done it 16 years already. You know, a month every year. I haven't been back since the pandemic when they kicked me out, but I'm going back. The program has started up again, and there's something to do for everybody. We also have to let our local and our Washington delegation know how we feel. They need to get the emails, because nobody writes these people. And if we can get a lot of people to write them and tell them how we feel, then they'll get the message. And we have to demand that they keep their support up for Israel, because things are going to change. It always does. And so we have to put the pressure on them.
That's right, McKee.
So that's all I have to say. I want to thank you very much. And I'm Yisrael Chai. The people of Israel live. Thank you very much.
Yashikoa. For our tribe, it means good job. All right. So I want to acknowledge, really pleased to see that we have a number of members from the Orthodox Jewish community here. You can tell the uniforms, the black and white with the hats, the young men from the yeshiva. Welcome. Welcome. We love to see everybody here. From the conservative Christians to the Orthodox Jews and everybody in between. We all believe in the Word of God. So I was going to ask Mary Green to speak next. She is the backbone of Ricky. She is the president of Ricky's really since the day we got rolling about 7 years ago. But Mary's got some limited mobility. She's up the top of the stairs there. Thank you for all you've been doing, Mary.
You hear me? A few days ago, on the Holy Sabbath, terrorists accumulated on the streets of Providence and said words that have not been heard since the 1930s and the 1940s. And American Jews at that time were powerless. We are no longer powerless. We cannot allow any human being to believe that they are safe quoting Goebbels and Eichmann on the streets of Providence. Not in our generation. And despite this huge sign behind me that says anti-Semitism, we got to get rid of that term. The true term is Jewphobia. An irrational hatred that has no basis, but is very dangerous. And now my prepared remarks, which should only take me 2 hours. If we want the war to stop, as all the world seems to want to do, there's an easy answer. Surrender the hostages and get rid of Hamas. The war will stop instantly. Do you want to avoid Gaza casualties? Hey ho, Hamas has got to go. Hey ho, Hamas has got to go. Hey ho, Hamas has got to go. Hey ho, Hamas has got to go.
Hey!
Hamas has got to go!
Did it better than me. Israel is here to stay.
Yes.
We tell the world we are not going away anywhere. There is no reason for us to apologize or need to justify our need and our desire to have security in our homeland. It is time to dismantle the Hamas apartheid regime. Hamas is apartheid. A Jew who tries to live in Gaza will be murdered instantly. What do we call that crowd? Apartheid. Hamas is apartheid. I am tired of the canard against Israel when it's utterly ludicrous. We could not stop the Nazi genocide in the 30s and 40s, but we can in 2023. Hey, ho, Hamas has got to go. Hey, ho, Hamas has got to go. Hey, ho, Hamas has got to go. Hey, ho, Hamas has got to go.
Thank you, Russell.
Thanks, Russell.
All right, Russell.
Thanks, Russell. You're hired. So our next speaker is Andrew Pessin. Andrew's been very active on and off over the years with our attempts to educate the public about the dangers that have now become even worse. Andrew is a professor at Connecticut College. He has written extensively about the damage that the woke agenda is doing on the colleges and the problem of anti-Semitism. He tangled with some of these folks on his campus and came out on top, as far as I understand it, more or less. So, without further ado, here's Andrew Pessin.
Thank you, Howard, and thank you everybody for showing up today. The Jewish people are outnumbered. We are grossly outnumbered in the world and in every country in which we live, except, of course, for one. But we are not alone. We have some friends, we have some allies, some of whom are here tonight, and we thank you from the bottom of our heart. We need every ally that we can get. I am here for the tortured and the murdered, the babies, the children, the teenagers, the disabled, the elderly, for the raped women, the mutilated bodies, the slain families, entire families, tied together and burned alive. I am here for the hostages, the babies, the children, all of them, who are real human beings like you and me, like your children, like your parents, your grandparents. Say their names. I am here for the Jews, because the tortured and the murdered and the hostages were targeted for one reason and one reason only, because they are Jews. It's not complicated. In fact, it comes down to a simple yes or no question. Is it acceptable to slit babies' throats, rape little girls, chop off the hands and feet of teenagers, gouge out eyes, murder children in front of their parents, parents in front of their children, then kidnap the children, bind entire families together and burn them alive, and worse, in the pursuit of any political aim? The answer is either yes or an unqualified full stop no. Because the second someone adds a but, or it's complicated, or look at the context, or even the occupation, they are turning their alleged no into a yes. No, nothing, no alleged grievances of any sort could justify what happened on October 7th. And you know, there's a word for violence that targets civilians for political aims. It's terrorism. Anyone who answers yes to that question, who is incapable of identifying and condemning the perpetrators and acts of October 7th as terror, is pro-terror, pure and simple. If you cannot answer no to my question, you are pro-terror. Say its name. Hamas is a genocidal terrorist organization whose founding charter openly endorses the murder of every Jew on earth, and whose sadistic and cruel and barbaric intentions were made clear to the world on October 7th. There isn't a country in the world that wouldn't respond massively to a barbaric ISIS-style terror attack on its civilians, and that wouldn't be justified in doing whatever it takes to remove that genocidal threat to its citizens. And for those rightly concerned about civilians caught in the crossfire, as Russ was mentioning, every civilian death is a tragedy, but remember two things. First, that one side, Hamas, directly targets civilians, while the other, Israel, is targeting the people who target civilians. And second, as Russ said, there is a simple way to save many, many civilian lives. Demand Hamas surrender and return the hostages, and the fighting ends instantly. Any other outcome is a victory for the terrorists and a yes to pro-terror. A woman I know was murdered with her husband in her home, the two of them managing to cover their teenage son with their bodies as they were riddled with bullets. The son was severely injured and lay there under his dead parents for 8 hours with a bullet in his stomach. He survived after multiple surgeries, although now he must live his life as an orphan with that unbearable experience burned into his memory. Imagine this happening to you and your children. This woman was the daughter of a mentor of mine, and both he and the woman and her husband had dedicated their lives to various projects promoting Jewish-Arab coexistence. She and her husband, and almost all of their neighbors in the surrounding houses, were murdered by people who do not believe in Jewish-Arab coexistence, or Jewish existence at all for that matter. Is this really so complicated? One side seeks coexistence and peace, the other seeks extermination. The answer is clear. I am here for the tortured, the murdered, the hostages. Say their names. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. So it's getting dark, it's getting late. We have one more speaker. I'm gonna have to abridge the book that Sam gave. I asked him give me a little bit of his background. I know Sam, you did some volunteer work for us. This is Sam Four. It's nice to see you again, Sam. Sam graduated from the University of Rhode Island in 2020. How much can I skip here?
Yeah, skip it all. Don't worry about it.
This is Sam Fuller. Go for
Hey.
it, Sam.
The October 7th attacks caught Israel by surprise. Many Jews and liberals in the U.S. were also caught by surprise at the explosion of Jew hatred in the West that has occurred in response to October 7th. The Jewish consciousness is largely defined by inherited trauma, and we are constantly told to remain vigilant. It is odd, then, that it is as if we have forgotten that when we are at our most safe, Jew hatred only ever lies dormant, waiting for the right conditions before it strikes, shape-shifting cleverly to meet the world where it's at. But let me remind you that Jew hatred is so powerful that it has the capacity to turn even the most supposedly educated people into vicious, genocidal maniacs, sympathetic to and glorifying and delighting in the brutalities that even the Nazis tried to hide. We in the West must make no mistake that we are now caught, whether we like it or not, in a battle against the informal extensions of Hamas within our own borders that have been growing for some time. Gaza's Hamas is a terrorist organization with the explicit intent to kill all Jews and destroy Israel. They couldn't care less about Palestinian prosperity, nor could they care more about the destruction of Jews in Israel. These attitudes have developed in the West. Domestic Hamas can be heard shouting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Know that this is a call to effect the sworn goals of Hamas. It means from the Jordan River east of the West Bank all the way to the Mediterranean Sea, Israel will be forcibly dissolved and, quote, returned. This chant is coming from many of the same people who are demanding a ceasefire and claim that Israel is just genociding Gazans. These people fail to acknowledge that Gaza's Hamas demands martyrdom from civilians, uses Palestinians and their facilities as human shields. When Jews are massacred by groups with a stated goal to eradicate us, it's Israel's fault, says 34 Harvard student groups, and we need to contextualize Hamas's violent history. While we're at it, should we contextualize the Holocaust? Perhaps we'll find some reason to conclude that the Jews are responsible for Nazi crimes against us, yeah? But when Israel targets genocidal operatives that embed themselves within the civilian population, Israel is the genocider, not the organization with the sworn goal of genocide who has destroyed Gazan quality of life with its Jew-murdering priorities. Listen to the words of the post-colonialists in my generation, saying, and I quote, "What did you think decolonize meant?" in response to October 7th. Listen to the cheers in academia of a Cornell professor who celebrated October 7th, calling it exhilarating to watch when babies were murdered. Other faculty at Yale have said that anything that affects the resistance is justified. These people are so blinded by their anti-Semitism, they can't entertain a hypothetical scenario in which they're brutally murdered by barbarians who are part of their own, quote, resistance movement. Think that these genocidal sentiments are isolated to a couple faculty radicals? Just explore the website canarymission.org. Hamas's leader, in another propaganda campaign targeting naive Westerners, claimed that, quote, the same type of racism that killed George Floyd is being used by Israel to kill the Palestinians. It is eerie that the audience most likely to fall victim to this propaganda are the college-educated, most of whom ironically know nothing about the history of the Israel-Palestine conflict, except Israel equals oppressor, Palestinians equal oppressed. Indeed, for these people, the reductive binary framework of oppressed versus oppressor is a sufficient calculus to produce an absolutist position in favor of Palestinians and against Israel, no matter the historical complexity and no matter the degree of violence perpetrated against Jews. Many in my generation and the faculty that indoctrinate them are Hamas's useful morons. We live in an era where many college students cry about the violence of microaggressions, all the while justifying literal terrorism against Jews. A Stanford teacher was suspended after he separated Jews from the rest of the class and isolated them to, quote, stimulate what Jews were doing to Palestinians, according to a student in the class. In the fog of war, legacy media automatically trusted Hamas, participating in modern blood libel. Rashida Tlaib, a United States rep, has yet to remove her social media claim that Israel is responsible for the hospital explosion, which runs contrary to all the available evidence and the conclusions of multiple Western states. These are only a tiny minority of examples that illustrate the wave of new Jew haters and their assistants. The events of October 7th have unleashed a new era of Jew hatred in the West, one that has been building and circulating in the ivory towers for decades, only now permitted to gnash its vicious teeth. This Jew hatred will soon descend upon our children in K-12 public schools, blaming the, quote, Zionists for the Middle East problems, among others. Just you wait. It's coming to your kids' schools. We must now engage in a front of our own within the culture. This front is against the new tide of Jew hatred in the West, which is inextricably mixed with and supported by other radical schools of thought. I implore you to start making the connections between the other radical ideas you hear and the emergent Jew hatred coming from many of the same extremists. I urge you to start distrusting people who say they stand for social justice, but that Hamas's violence needs historical context. I beseech you to no longer make excuses for domestic Hamas and its cronies and proxies. I hope that you are becoming increasingly aware of domestic Hamas and their intentional and unintentional accomplices, the lies that they spew, the hate that they have, the ideas that undergird their chants and claims, the positions of power they occupy, the specter that they are. Jews have survived over 3,000 years of persecution. We will survive this wave too, but we need your help. The world is complex, and the history of the Israel-Palestine conflict is complexity on steroids, and we need to recognize that as we work towards thwarting this new era of Jew hatred. I believe that we can win this home front. Just look at how most of the Western world has responded thus far. Look at polls of American attitudes towards Israel and the U.S.'s response. Look at how strong most of our elected officials have been in their support of Jewish survival and the defense of Israel in eradicating another head of this hydra. Do not let the support wane. Do not hesitate to speak out against Hamas's propaganda that you hear come out of the mouths of your compassionate but oh so ignorant peers. Inform yourself about the history of this long and complicated conflict and know that ultimately the world is better with Israel in it, and that we must still work actively toward peace as we have numerous times in the past. Not yet, however. We must keep showing the world that it is us who are willing to work towards and offer peace. Together, Jew, Christian, Muslim, Israeli, Palestinian, Westerner, and Arab can stand together against hate itself, against misinformation itself, against bad faith itself, against ignorance itself, and defend reason and a path to peace, if we really want it. But do not forget the struggle we are now engaged with here at home. We are Israel's active duty soldiers being called up to fight this battle right here. Thank you.
Hey, Butchick. Thanks. Okay, thank you all for being here. I'm going to turn the mic back over to Anthony for close us out.
I want to thank Paul Rihanna and the Rhode Island Coalition for Israel for helping me throw this event. And I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I know it was a little short notice. We were going to protest Senator Mack's community meeting, but she canceled it like a coward. So we had to change it around. But I want to thank everyone, and I want to remind you that history did not start in 1946, and Hamas is ISIS. Thank you, everyone.
To communicate with Rhode Island Coalition for Israel, we are on the internet at ricoalitionforisrael.org. Anybody want to start a chant before everybody leaves? Hey, ho, Hamas has got to go.
Hey, ho! Hamas has got to go!
Hey, ho, Hamas has got to go. 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 Hey, ho, Hamas has got to go.
Hey, ho! Hamas has got to go!
Thank you.